Nintendo has been around for 132 years now. What started out as a simple playing cards company have gone to revolutionize platforming, create masterpieces like Breath of the Wild and Xenoblade Chronicles, have made the same game 3 times in the form of Splatoon, and have also put out whatever garbage they feel like occasionally. I'm fully aware that in recent years Nintendo has been a little bit controversial, as they've slowly been getting a little bit more Scrooge McDuck over the years. But I grew up with this company, I love Nintendo, I hold it so close to my heart. This is the Nintendo 64, my favourite console ever. I don't have many games for it, but to be fair, I'm not made of money. And these games are expensive, they cost an arm and a leg. But my god, what peaceful, beautiful games this console has brought to life. Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Star Fox 64, Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Majora's Mask, Diddy Kong Racing, Paper Mario. It may not have had great third-party support, due to cartridges not being able to contain as much information as discs, but to me at least, this just kinda made it more special. This console has a very small library, but that's okay, because I love the library so much. Nintendo 64 games have their own unique aura to them. Most games just have such a peaceful atmosphere. This is all the way down to the landscapes, the design, the soundtracks, oh my god, the soundtracks. Whenever I hit any track from Ocarina of Time, I get chills, you guys. This is such a well-made console. So at this point you may be wondering, what the fuck is with the title? Well, let me explain. I'm going to show you some images taken from various N64 games. Notice anything? Let me elaborate. Most of these images tie into what I said before about the peaceful bliss of these games. But at the same time, do any of these images make you feel a little bit uncomfortable? Not exactly creepy or scary, just a slight sense of discomfort. Let me show you them again, but this time with some more fitting music. Oh, sorry, was that a little too on the nose? Hold up, let me just fix that. Okay. See, at this point, I'm sure you're aware of what liminal space is. It became a massive trend a while ago, so I won't go into too much detail about it just yet, but if you don't know what it is, don't worry, I'll go into more detail about it in a minute. So, big deal, right? The N64 has some liminal spaces. Who cares? But it's not just about that. Sometimes there are other factors in these games that just kind of give them a off-putting, slightly creepy aura to them. So I've split this video into categories. First, we're going to be starting with liminal space, because I thought it was good to start at familiar territories, and also if you don't know what a liminal space is, then it's good to start with this point as it creates an understanding of what liminal horror is, which will be very relevant later on. So what is a liminal space? Well, according to the many YouTubers who have talked about it, liminal spaces are images online that intends to create psychological horror by using a mix of empty vastness, loneliness, existentialism, and also an element of nostalgia, recognizing something from way back but not quite being able to identify it. A little bit like deja vu. Me personally, I don't really get a sense of deja vu with these images, but I do get a slight sense of nostalgia, and also a terrifying feeling of just emptiness. When I was younger, one of my biggest fears was being lost and alone. Seriously, I couldn't handle being lost in a fucking supermarket. I was also pretty freaked out by mazes, weirdly. I also kind of faintly remember having recurring dreams of being lost in a big empty place. A lot of the time it would kind of resemble a field, I guess, but everything would just feel so surreal and artificial. A bit like a Teletubbies set. Nowadays I think this is really fascinating and a really well done way of doing horror, and I really relate to it on a personal level. I'll use another example. This is way before my time and I actually only found it through Penguin Zero's video, but I'm using this clip from Courage the Cowardly Dog as it recently became popular.
Return the slab. What? Return the slab. Or suffer my curse.
I know, fucking terrifying, right? To be fair, this is kind of cheating because here there's an obvious threat, and with liminal horror, the horror doesn't come from a direct and obvious threat. But this is still a mix of both liminal terror and also a mix of Uncanny Valley, surrealism, and also kind of analog horror, which are all things we're going to be going into about later. I have a lot to say, trust me. So back to N64 games. Due to less space on N64 cartridges, the games definitely have their own liminal horror to them. We don't see this as much on PS1 and older PC games, because those games are crafted a lot more linear. There are definitely places you can explore, but rarely have I seen an old PS1 or PC game where it's just a giant field to explore, or you know, a desert, or just a big open area with no buildings. But the N64 had so many big open places like fields and overall landscapes to explore, a lot of the time with not that many entities in them, frankly, or a lot of the time it would take longer for the entities to spawn in, meaning we get these giant landscapes with absolutely nothing in them. Another way of liminal space is having newly refurbished, running man-made buildings and towns with no one in them. This is extremely present in a lot of N64 games. So yeah, basically, fields. Fucking scary, right? That's it, right? There's no more horror to N64 games? Nope, we are at the tip of the mother-flipping iceberg, friends. So, remember that scene I showed you from Courage the Cowardly Dog? Do you think this looks kind of uncanny? Well, a lot of N64 games also feel very uncanny and surreal. But what is the Uncanny Valley? Well, according to this Google paragraph I found because I couldn't be bothered to summarize it myself, a human appearance or behavior can make an artificial figure seem more familiar to viewers, but only up to a point. The sense of viewer familiarity drops sharply into the Uncanny Valley once the artificial figure tries but fails to mimic human realism. So basically, something that looks almost natural and human, but something just feels off, causing an element of fear. Now, to be fair, this motherfucker from Courage the Cowardly Dog doesn't look human, it looks fucking terrifying, but it does give the same effect. Recently online I heard someone say something about the Uncanny Valley that frankly disturbed me, and that is, why would we naturally be afraid of something that looks almost human but doesn't behave in a human natural way? What did early man face to create this fear? There you go. Have fun sleeping tonight. But anyway, for the time, the N64 graphics were pretty amazing, but today's standard, let's just say they're not up to scratch. Now, older games on the NES and SNES don't feel uncanny at all, but this is probably due to the fact that the graphics don't even resemble modern graphics at all. But here, it's a lot closer to modern gameplay at least. So the weird chunky 3D models and the blurry backgrounds just feel unnatural. But what about PS4 games? I've played Crash Bandicoot and they look exactly the same, you may be saying. Well, it's not mainly the characters that are off-putting, it's the surroundings. Like I said, Nintendo really took advantage of the open world technology, so a lot of the ground is going to be the same blurry texture repeated over and over and over again, especially in stuff like fields and also open bits of water, which can be seen a lot of the time in things like Pilot Wings. This is super uncanny when noticed. And take a look at these blurry backgrounds. We can't talk about this without bringing up Mario 64's Wet Dry World. This level is a lot of things, fucking annoying being one of them. But many people, including myself, agree that Wet Dry World has its own negative emotional aura. It's cramped, it's weirdly lit, I don't like it, and these fucking plate flipping robots are a pain in my ass. But take a look at the background, this is the creepiest thing. What are we even looking at? Well, it's Shibam in Yamen, but underwater. What the fuck, why is it like that? Are we underwater too? What's a random level doing floating here? Well, the answer is, it's just for immersion, dummy. You're not even meant to think about it, you're barely even meant to notice it. But still, pretty creepy, right? This brings us to surrealism. This one's a bit of a shorter one. Take a look at this famous Dali painting. What does it mean? It doesn't matter. Not now anyway. Look at the surroundings. Now look at the focus of the painting. Let's just say it's weird, right? Now look at this screenshot from the opening of Majora's Mask. Same kind of vibes, right? Now look at this clip from Salad Fingers. I know, what the fuck did I just see, right? And now look at this Banjo-Kazooie enemy. Weird stuff, right? Surrealist art is often a very interesting way of doing horror as it gets the person's mind going, trying to come up with an explanation of what the fuck they just saw. Am I saying Banjo-Kazooie is some weird form of surrealist horror? Not at all. Am I starting to sound a little pretentious right now? Maybe so. But in the simplest way of explaining, weird stuff is creepy. Like I said earlier, these games have superb soundtracks. The Mario 64 credits, what a beautiful score to go along with such a wonderful experience. The Ocarina of Time soundtrack, one of the greatest game soundtracks in my opinion, right next to Metal Gear Rising and Undertale. Gerudo Valley, what an epic dramatic track, and Kakariko Village, such a peaceful little tune. And Hyrule Field, never before has a game OST track had such a vivid, pure feel of fun and adventure. And the Star Fox 64 theme, such a grand, powerful theme. Mario Kart 64 Rainbow Road, easily the best track in any Mario Kart soundtrack. And the Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack, man, this is just a fun, bizarre score. Listening to this feels like smelling cheddar cheese in wet socks. Funny. But at the same time, while a lot of these tracks seem very peaceful, when paired with the infinite, empty, alone feeling, can only make it seem more of a deserted wasteland. I'm about to play Kakariko Village with some more liminal space images. Did it do anything for you? If so, that may have just proven my point. So why is this? Well, the N64 could produce a lot more detailed sounds than compared to its predecessors, but it couldn't do everything, it had limitations. So in this way, could the Uncanny Valley transfer to soundtrack too? Maybe so. After all, the N64 could produce a lot more instrumentation than previously. I mean, it can replicate almost any instrument, but it feels a little artificial. Artificial representations of real-life structures is something that we see all the time in liminal spaces. So the same thing could be with music. It's not out of the question, at least. And could this slightly artificial digital representations that are also slightly outdated be its own horror? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you analog horror. You may have heard of something called the Walton Files. There are many others out there, but I'm not too familiar with them, as I'm not super into analog horror myself, but just take a look at this clip.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Analog horror uses old technology like VHS tapes, and also uses child-friendly looking characters to create horror, in sort of a creepy nostalgic way. By now I'm sure you've seen / heard of Poppy Playtime. It's sort of the new Five Nights at Freddy's. I personally don't care for it, but many do, and that's okay. Well, this series uses a lot of childlike characters and VHS footage, only distorted and evil looking. This can also kinda be seen with things like Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, a series I fucking love and I'm pretty nostalgic for. I remember so many kids' introduction to internet horror being this. And as of writing this script, a new series is to come out in about a week, which I'm very excited for. Well, that series similarly uses nostalgia in a way of horror. I never grew up with things like Sesame Street, but kids who did, I can totally see this bringing nostalgia back for them, in a uncomfortable way. Now, to really get a sense of analog horror in the N64, we can't look at HD footage, so come with me as we play on the original console with the original graphics. Yeah, this is a big difference, right? To be fair, I'm not playing this on a CRT, but it's close enough. But why is nostalgic technology scary? Well, we're saving part of that answer for the conclusion, which I poured my heart and soul into, so if you were to watch anything, at least watch that. But for now, I think maybe it's almost a sense of found footage, a concept used in a lot of horror movies, for better or for worse. It's essentially where a film or video is simulated to be a real random video found of people dying in mysterious ways. The most famous found footage film being the Blair Witch Project, which is exactly that concept. Similarly, that uses homemade looking low budget quality as both a way of keeping it real looking and also adding an element of horror. Also probably because it was a super low budget movie, but that's besides the point. So I think you get the point with this one. I will now discuss my conclusion. So, the answer. What does it all mean? Is the N64 just a simple dumb console and I'm looking too far into it? Or has Nintendo been hiding something from us for all these years? Maybe it's a government experiment. They're brainwashing us? Or maybe it's something else. I've talked a lot about nostalgia in this video, and using that, I think I found the answer. And it may shock you. Get ready. The real reason the N64 is so scary is because we're afraid to live our current lives. Nintendo has always been and will always be the most unique mainstream gaming company ever. Shigeru Miyamoto uses elements of his childhood in his games, and it's plain to see that other Nintendo developers have clearly been inspired by this. It doesn't matter how old the console is, it doesn't matter what our connections are, but playing Nintendo games makes us feel like a kid. I'm no old man, I understand that. I don't have a mortgage or rent to worry about just yet. I'm a good 2 years before I need to worry about that. But I still understand the difference between being 7 and not being 7. Your perception of the world is so much different, and having grown after that, and looking back at what we once had, it can be scary, and our brain doesn't know what type of fear it should be experiencing, so it fills in the blanks with this empty, depressing feeling. But at the same time, we get a sense of joy and we appreciate our childhoods as we play these games again. And isn't that just a beautiful thing in the end of the day? Consider everything else I said in the video complete bullshit. This is the only thing that matters. Keep going with what you're trying to accomplish. Just know that your childhood is being preserved, and it helps you grow to where you are now. And with that, thank you for watching. This video was really hard to make, and if everything goes accordingly, it could just be my best work yet.